You told a story when I saw you talk about the process, the time, the energy, the hassle of writing one of your books, and then you told the story about when you learned this material, writing another book, and the difference.
Yeah.
Could you tell that story?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think about what the link is to what I was just talking about. Well, yeah. So this really brings me to the other issue of renewal. So before I can tell that story, I have to say a little about renewal.
Okay, you know what? Why don't we talk a little about renewal, because that's kind of coming next in a way.
Good.
So, yeah.
So here's the problem in organizations, in my opinion. And this applies to big organizations and to little organizations. Unconsciously, we tend to think of people as machines. We just unconsciously make the connection that people will operate in much the same way machines do. Actually, at this stage in our evolution, we tend to think of people as computers, which is people on, machines on steroids, meaning we expect that people should be able to perform for long periods of time continuously at very high speeds and run multiple programs at the same time. Well, here's the problem with that. Human beings aren't designed to do that. Human beings are meant to be oscillatory beings in an oscillatory universe. Why do I say that?
What does that mean?
It's just, I like the way it sounds. It means that we're meant to pulse. We're meant to make waves. We are rhythmic beings. We are periodic beings. We are designed to move between the expenditure of energy and the renewal of energy. If we expend too much energy, we burn out. If we expend too little energy, we lose strength. If you are not growing, Nordine, you are dying, right? The muscle is the perfect analogy for this. If you go into a gym and you do 180 bicep sets because you really want to get your bicep to be stronger, you will break down that muscle virtually beyond repair. If you go in and you do a limited number of bicep curls or exercises, and then you allow the muscle to recover, the nerve will send a message to the brain that says, I need more muscle fiber. And during your recovery period, you will grow. So the way that you build muscle is not to expend energy, period, but it's to expend energy and then recover. Between workouts, you ought to be recovering for up to 48 hours. There are great weightlifters, Nordine may be one of them, who have trained once a week. They train very hard and they recover for 6 days. So the recovery piece is critical to growth. Now, the flip side is also true. You don't do anything. You say to me, you know what, Tony, I work behind I sit at my computer all day long, I'm typing all day long, and I've got repetitive stress syndrome. And my arm is killing me. And I say to you, well, what do you want? And you say, I just want to be free of the stress. And I say, okay, fine. So I'll cast you up. I'll put a nice big cast from your wrist all the way up to your shoulder. And I will actually give you a sling, and I'll put you in a hammock, and I'll feed you lemonade and alcohol or whatever it is you want. And you don't have to do one thing. You will be stress-free for 4 weeks. At the end of 4 weeks, I take the cast off. How's your arm doing? It's atrophied. The muscle is atrophied. Stress is the only means by which we expand capacity. Stress is fabulous. Stress is necessary. When you stop growing, you start dying. It's not a metaphor, it's a reality. That's exactly what's happening to a muscle, but it's also happening to your neurons, it's happening to your ability. Whatever it is that you need to be available to you, you need to keep using. In fact, you need to keep using it past your comfort zone, but not continuously. So the notion of recovery is that we are meant, think about the different functions of the body. The heart rate oscillates. The brain waves. Eyes blink. Muscles contract in response to a demand, and then they relax when the demand is over, unless You experience the stress psychologically as unending, in which case the muscle doesn't relax and you've got what? Yeah, you've got spasm, you've got back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain. And then you go to all 100 different doctors and they tell you, they take MRIs of you and they show you that you have a herniated disc. I'm here to tell you, big deal. So do 70% of all men over 50, and most of them aren't feeling any pain. That has nothing to do with your pain. The pain is the spasm. The pain is the failure of the muscle to relax. It's the failure of recovery. That's the problem. So what you want to do is you want to build a rhythmic relationship in your life between expenditure and recovery. Okay, so now you got to ask yourself the question, how much recovery? I got a lot of hassle from somebody at Canyon Ranch yesterday about using the word recovery, because they said, God, it's so associated with, the 12-step program and coming back from addiction and so on. I don't mind that, but let's call it renewal, rejuvenation. So how long do you renew? How much time do you spend? Well, during the day, there's a rhythm in our life that's called the ultradian rhythm. The ultradian rhythm is a subset of the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm, most of you know, is the rhythm of day and night. So at night, you're supposed to sleep, and during the day, you're supposed to be awake. If you screw with that, you do it at your own peril. Shift workers never, ever get it fully adapt to working when the body wants you to be asleep. That's why they have higher injury rates, higher accidents, more healthcare problems, less productivity. It's just a given. The body is designed to move like this and at those times. The ultradian rhythm is the daytime version of that circadian rhythm, which is essentially this. If you go and had a nice little break for 10 minutes just now, and you had something to eat, and you didn't jump on your BlackBerry and answer email during the entire break, I know none of you did that, and you had a good conversation with someone that was pleasant, and then what you did was you got some renewal. And what you came back into the room with was a high state of physiological arousal. You were at your physiological best, or you had replenished the system to some significant degree. Over the course of the 90 minutes that follow, and we're about halfway through them now, you will slowly fall down, no matter what happens, into a physiological trough. Your body at the end of 90 minutes will be screaming at you, what? Give me a break. But you won't normally, particularly when you're home working. You'll push through it. How? You will call on your emergency system, your fight or flight system. You'll call on the stress hormones that are the body's natural speed. They're speed, and speed kills. Cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline. You'll call it up. You'll use it the way a driver on a highway gets a flat tire and puts that little small tire on the car and then drives 300 miles at 75 miles an hour with the small tire. You can do it, but at your peril. It's not meant to be used that way, that system. So what you really want to do is begin to get sensitive, aware of the need for renewal. How do you think you do that? Practice. Practice. Now, practice is partly awareness. What lets you know that you need a break? What are the signs that you need a break? You yawn. You yawn. What else? Pardon me? Yeah, you don't focus as well. You can't think. You can't listen as well. What else? Pardon me? Right, your mood goes negative. You start to get frustrated, irritable. My voice starts to sound irritating where it was okay at the beginning. You're impatient, that kind of thing. Yeah, focus. We said that, focus, right. You lose focus. And what about physically what happens to you besides tired? Thirsty. What else? Yes, hunger. What else? Fidget. When you start to move like this in the seat. So all of these are signs for you, if you pay attention to them, that your body wants a break. Everything starts physiologically. If you can't get the physiological stuff in order, everything else suffers. So you've got to take these signals seriously. So it's not the quantity of your recovery that matters, It's not the quantity of your recovery that matters, it's the quality of your recovery. That's why you have to train recovery. You need to train it because you can quote, renew for 2 hours and get nothing out of your renewal. Or you can renew for a very short period of time and get a powerful dose of renewal. Actually, let me just tell this story. I'll come to the book story right after it, and I have to act it out in order to make it interesting. Otherwise, it's fabulously dull. So when we really got this understanding of renewal, it was, again, through the athletes, and it was specifically through the tennis players, because tennis players were geniuses, the best of them at recovery. And this is how we discovered it. We would, particularly my partner, would be watching tennis players to try to figure out where things were going wrong, and particularly to distinguish what separated the great players from the near-great players. And we had the luxury of being able to see the number 1, number 2, number 5 player, and then the number 70, 80, 90 player. So the distinctions between these players, when you're just watching them hit the ball, are very, very small. But somehow Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal wins over and over and over again when it comes down to the key matches of a tournament. Even though if you actually look at their strokes, they're pretty darn similar to the number 60 or 80 or 200. Okay, so we're watching this for literally months and months to try to see if we can define the things that separate the top players from the next level. And it's hopeless. We can't do it. And finally, one day, Jim has this great insight when we have number 1 and number 2 on the court playing each other. Number 1 and number 2 in the world playing each other, hitting the ball, playing a match. And here's what he discovers. During the time between points, meaning the 20 to 25 seconds after a point ends before the next one starts, each of these 2 players are doing the same set of 4 activities, exactly the same set of 4 activities. No other player does them, virtually no other player he's ever seen does them, and neither of them are aware they're doing them. What do you think they're accomplishing? Recovery, exactly. So what is it that they do? Okay, so the first thing is the point ends, the player hits the shot, and he turns away from the net. Why? Let it go. It's the energy serenity prayer, we call it. Don't invest your energy where it won't do you any good. Invest your energy where it will make a difference. Don't invest your energy where it won't, and have the wisdom to know the difference. In other words, once a point is over, and this metaphor really applies to your life, big time. Once a point is over, it's over. Any further energy expended there, except at some point in the future to reflect on lessons learned, is a waste of your energy. So why would you spend it? But we all do it all the time, don't we? Great players don't do it. They let it go. There's a great story about Barry Diller, who now runs IAC, the Interactive Corporation, and was at that point trying to buy CBS. This is 10, 15 years ago. And at the very last, he thinks he has it, and it's a lifelong dream for him that he's going to get it. At the last minute, in swoops Sumner Redstone, and he buys it. He offers a bigger price and buys it out from under Barry Diller. Next day, the reporters are talking to Barry about what happened, and they say, "So Barry, you must be incredibly depressed. What are you thinking about all this?" He says, "They won, we lost, next." That is excellent energy management. Excellent energy management. What for? Why am I going to sit here and regret? Why am I going to obsess about this? It's not going to get me anything. Second thing they do, they switch the racket from the dominant hand to the non-dominant hand. Why? Recover, let the muscles relax. If you hold on to the racket all the way through a 3 or 4 hour match, and the other person keeps putting it in his other hand and letting it relax, who do you think is going to have more strength left in that arm at the end of 4 hours? It's a no-brainer. Third thing that they do is, as they're walking toward the backcourt, they're playing with the strings of their racket, right? You've all seen that? They're not fixing their strings. Strings are fine. What are they doing? No, they're not going over the next point in their mind because they don't think about the next point. Athletes don't spend time thinking in that cognitive way. The most they do, let me just say this, the most they would do is a single word. rush net. That's 2 words. Move toward the net. Relax. Something very small, because they don't want the brain, which is way too complex, to get in the way of the body, which has its own genius. So no, it's not that. What is it? Exactly. So that they're not looking around and losing focus on the very narrow agenda that they have, which is to stay concentrated on seeing the ball in the next point. And they don't want to look at the crowd, they don't want to look at the umpire, they don't want to look at their opponent, they want to stay 100% focused. And the last thing they do is something that we came to call the Matador Walk. Here's how we came to call it the Matador Walk. When we were trying to understand what makes it possible for people to perform under extremely high pressure, we went and talked to a large group of matadors, because you really want to understand what performing under pressure is. Matador's a pretty good person to ask. Perform well, kill the bull. Perform badly, die. That's a pretty simple one. So we thought we'd learn a lot about how to deal with pressure. So we said, well, what are the kinds of things that they taught you when you were beginning to be a matador? And they said, oh my gosh, they didn't teach us anything about how to be matador. All they taught us to do was to walk with the look of courage. What is that? Well, that's this. It's shoulders back, it's head up, it's confident gaze forward. It's, whereas if you think of yourself in an athletic situation in your life, assume you've all had some athletics thing, and those of you who are sort of the weekend warrior types know this feeling after, you hit a bad golf shot, or something went wrong. Oh my God, I can't believe I did it again. I'm such a loser, blah, blah, blah. Why does it matter from the perspective of performance whether or not and recovery, whether or not you walk like a matador or you walk like a person who's half dead? Why does it make any difference? Well, because the mind and body are one. How you hold your body profoundly influences how you feel. I'd like everybody in the room for a moment to smile at me. Fake. Give me a nice big fake smile. Now I want you to think about how depressed you are. You can't do it, can you? No, because the body won't let you. And also, the opposite is true too. If I go like this, I do want to say I have some very inspiring things to say to you today. I have to say, thank you, Evan, for bringing me here. I'm pretty excited. I hope you are too. It's not going to do it. So there you go, 1, 2, 3, 4 behaviors, 25 seconds. Here's what we discover. When we hook them up to telemetry, when we start monitoring their heart rate from the side of the court, what we discover is that they are recovering, or they are dropping 20 heartbeats, 1 heartbeat per second, 20 heartbeats between points. If they go 25 heartbeats. Now that is an extraordinary level of recovery. That's a powerful recovery. If you try to do it, even if you're somebody who works out, and you look at your watch if you've got a heart rate monitor on, after 20 or 25 seconds, unless you are a professionally conditioned athlete, you'll be lucky if you recovered 5, 6, 7 heartbeats in those first 20 seconds. They were recovering 1 per second. So they went from 165 to 145. Now, you're in the 4th hour of the match, and you've been recovering back down to 145, 20 heartbeats consistently throughout the match, and your opponent has not been recovering at all. Hello? Recovery drives performance. Renewal drives performance. Fitness, I said earlier, fitness is the speed of recovery. So the fitter you are, the faster you recover, which means you want to train recovery in your life. And Evan asked me earlier, what does it mean to train recovery? That's like drawing the negative space in a picture. It's very counterintuitive. Well, the answer is you want to train your body to deeply relax. You want to train your physiology to calm down. You did it just with the breath. So you do the in-breath. Here's a powerful piece of recovery. I know we did this in-breath, but I want to deconstruct it for you just one step further. So just put your pens down for 1 second. You don't have to stand up. Stay seated. Feel your feet on the floor so that we know you're here as opposed to somewhere else. And now I want you to do one breath, actually. I want you to do one breath. No, we'll do a few. Here's how I'd like you to do the breath. I'd like you to do it in to a count of 3 through your nose, and out to a count of 6 through your mouth. Same way that Eben was talking about, meaning a deep diaphragmatic breath, but in through your nose to 3 and out through your mouth to a count of 6. So let's close our eyes and actually do just a few, and then I'll pull you back to the room, okay? Let's do it. Okay, you can come back to the room. So that's about 20 seconds. Do you notice a difference? Yes. So where did you get the recovery? Where was the recovery? What part of that experience? The exhale. That's what we don't do. We do not let the air out of the lungs. We don't invest in the recovery piece. We don't open the lungs so that they're completely empty and you're capable of breathing in. The lungs are half full in most of our breaths. So this piece, this recovery piece, is probably the most undervalued dimension of performance that exists among anything we've ever been able to recognize, and it's incredibly counterintuitive. So I want to give a 2-minute version of the story Eben was mentioning, which is how I wrote The Power of Full Engagement, because it'll bring it home for you in a way that's not, requiring you to be a tennis player professionally. So it turned out that when I wrote The Power of Full Engagement, I had, when we first signed the contract, a year to get it done. I had never done a book quicker than a year. I'd done several, but I'd never done one quicker than a year. And in this case, I had a lot of other things I needed to do during that period, so it was a little intimidating, but I didn't find it nerve-wracking because if the deadline was April 2002, officially, I treated it as April 2003, because that's what all writers do, miss your deadlines. So I didn't worry about it, and I started writing it I signed the contract in July of 2001. I had 10 months actually to do it. And I got to September, and of course September 11th, 2001 changed the world in a million ways, one of which was that books stopped selling. So on December 21st, 2001, I get a call from my editor saying, bad news, Tony, books aren't selling, and we got to figure out a way of dealing with it. So what we're going to do is, we are going to hold every writer absolutely accountable to handing in his book on the exact day it's due. If you don't, we'll take back the advance and we'll cancel the book. Merry Christmas. I'd written 8 pages at that point, and I had 90 days left. That's a tough one. So what do? Well, the natural thing for most people would be you push harder. You spend more hours, right? Bigger challenge, bigger demand, put in more hours. Hook yourself up to an intravenous feeding tube so you don't have to worry about eating. Put a cot by the side of your desk so you can literally fall into it when you finally get too exhausted to write any longer. Pop back up when you're ready. That's sort of, pull a series of college-style all-nighters. Here's what I did. Knowing what I know about the ultradian rhythms and what I've been talking to you about, I woke up at the same 7 o'clock I had always woken up. I had traditionally worked 12 hours a day on my books. This time I woke up at 7 o'clock. I work out of my home. I wrote from 7 till 8:30. Not a surprise, right? An ultradian, what I would call an ultradian sprint. 100% engaged, no email, no voicemail, no interruptions. At 90 minutes, it's 8:30, I go downstairs, I have breakfast. That's a form of recovery. I spend time with my family. That's a form of recovery most of the time. At 9 o'clock, I go back upstairs. I work for another 90 minutes the same exact way. At 10:30, I come down. I do some weight training to change channels, and I do the deep breathing exercise I just did with you. Recovery, disengage, change channels. At 10:30, go back up. I write till noon. That's my third ultradian sprint. At noon, I go out, I take a run. It turns out that when you run, your brain, not only do you switch channels, not only are you in recovery, you're building capacity physically by moving, but you are recovering mentally and emotionally by changing channels. It's a very reliable way to recover. So I run for several miles, but one of the bonuses is I get my best ideas while I'm running. Why? Because the brain is in recovery. The brain has shifted from left hemisphere dominance to right hemisphere dominance. And so the ability to think outside the box versus very focused. I mean, where are you when you get your best ideas? Where are you? Shower, running, diving, walking. Where aren't you when you get your best ideas? Sitting at your computer. So why wouldn't we build that intentionally into our lives? If we know, why make it serendipitous that you happen to get it when you are in the shower or you're running? Why not build that in as a time that you know you use that period to get your best ideas? So I got that understanding in a clear way during my runs, because in fact I had to start running with a little tape recorder, because otherwise it was such a state-specific experience. It's like a dream. You know, you'd have these ideas. If you waited till the end of the run, they'd be gone. Yeah. So, because it's coming from a different place. That's the proof that it's coming from a different place. So I came back, I had lunch, I read the newspaper, I went back to work at 1 o'clock. I worked till 2:30. 4 ultradian sprints, 6 hours of work. I stopped at 2:30, didn't write another word for the rest of the day. I wrote the book in 90 days. Well, what does that tell you? What that tells you is when you manage your energy efficiently, you get more done in less time at a higher level of engagement, and you get a life as a bonus. That's the deal.
So a quick story from my life. Over the last year and a half, all of the stars have aligned in my own life to get my physical fitness together. And a lot of it has to do with influences in my life. My girlfriend has been a great influence. And I've been studying this stuff and playing with it for over 10 years now. And finally it just came together in a ritual. And it's a morning ritual. When I wake up, I do my exercise, and I do it usually 6 to 7 days a week. And I'm not like a hard exerciser or anything. One of the things that I do is I use the stairwell in my apartment building. I live on the 17th floor, and you can go down 2 floors into the basement, into the garage. And once in a while I'll wake up, 2 things actually. One thing is, once in a while I'll wake up and I'll have an idea and I'll think, oh, I need to run to my computer real quick and put that in there. And I'll slip and I'll check my email while I'm there. And that's it. 2 hours later, I think, oops, how did that happen? And I never hit the stairwell, and I never hit the weights. That doesn't happen when I slip. So that's one that's very interesting. Another one is, once in a while, I'll be a little bit tired. Another piece of this, by the way, is I've gotten consistent good sleep. All right, so it's important to get sleep. Exactly, right. Yeah. Once in a while, though, I'll get distracted, or something will happen and take me off of my morning ritual, and I'll think, I don't know if I feel like it today. You know, I'll get back into my head for a second. But what I've noticed, fascinatingly enough, is that I get my best ideas when I'm on those stairs.
Yes.
That's where they happen. And what I do to motivate myself now, whenever I have one of those slip-ups, which might be every few weeks or something like that, is I remember my best ideas are in there.
Right.
They're not here. I can't get them if I stay here. And almost every time when I go, I'm halfway down, running down the stairs, or halfway back up the stairs, and one of them comes to me, and I have that realization, oh my God, this stuff is all connected.
Yeah.
It's all part of the same thing.
I'm really glad that he's not getting outdoors. That's good. You do not want to exercise outdoors ever. You'll get something like natural sunlight, and that could be very bad for your energy.
I'm a little bit of a freak. But anyway,
it's Los Angeles, it's very cold here and snowy, so you don't want to go outside.
And since I live right next to the beach, I wouldn't want to walk out there.
Oh my God, stay away from the beach.
Yeah.
Stay away from the beach.
That's a problem.
Woo. The best Eben, the best single ritual, mental ritual that I've ever, that I've found is both for me the most powerful and consistently for the people we work with the most powerful. I'm not going to tell you. No,
I don't deserve it.
I am. I've got no secrets.
I need help, Noah. I don't feel like I deserve it.
Eben,
Sorry.
Eben, we love you and you deserve it. Here it is.
Let me put my foot on the gas. Foot off the brake. Not in a motivational way, though.
Here it is. I thought of it because of what you were saying about you get stuck at the email. So how many of you, as virtually the first activity of your day, check your email? So what's so interesting about that is, it's a reflexive response that has, there are many explanations for it, but it's basically a reflexive or automatic response to the expectation that there's, stuff that you need to deal with, combined with, and this is the part you don't necessarily think of consciously, the enormous hunger to be valued and seen as important. And when you get your email, even though you probably don't consciously think of it, it reminds you you exist. Oh, all these people wrote to me? But here's the problem with answering your email as the first thing. It means that you have started your day on someone else's agenda. It's not your agenda, is it? You are now in responsive, I should say reactive mode from moment one in the day. That's why you end up 2 hours in front of it. And it's an addiction. So imagine that you built a ritual starting tomorrow morning where you tonight, and you would do this the night before this ritual, it would be part of your ritual would be to do it the night before, ask yourself, what is the activity tomorrow that I could do that would add the greatest value to what it is I'm after, to what it is I want to accomplish? What's the single activity that could add the greatest value? And then you began the day with a designated period of time. Now, it might be 30 minutes, it might be 60, it might be 90. If I were going to be recommending, I'd say do yourself a favor and start short. Don't force yourself to try to do, because it's hard. If you're not somebody who's used to concentrating on one thing at a time for 90 minutes, trust me, it won't come easily. But let's say you do it for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. No phone calls, no email, no interruptions from other people, no excuses. You're 100% focused on that. Now, let me tell you the trick to it. If you say you're going to start it at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, you don't start it at 10 to 7 or 10 after 7. Because then you begin to start to be able to cheat it. Oh, let me just get this one thing done, then I'll do it. And there you're 2 hours later on something else. It's 7 o'clock, and you stop when you decided you were going to stop, no matter where you are. Now, why is that? That's a really surprising one, because a lot of people say to me, well, look, Tony, when I get on a roll, now I'm in the zone. You were talking about the zone. Now I'm in the zone. I don't want to stop. Well, the problem is that if you stay at it that first time that you do it, you'll be fine. But what you will do is you will mess with the rhythms of your body. Your body, at that level of intensity, wants the break after 90 minutes. If you deprive it of that break, it'll be fine for a little while. But it will catch up with you relatively quickly. What you're trying to make yourself, at least if you're like me, you'd like to be operating at the highest possible level as much of the time as you can while you're awake. In fact, let me put it this way. What you really want to be is when you're working, you want to be fully engaged. And when you're not working, you want to be fully disengaged. And you don't want to live in the gray zone that we all live in between, where you're half there and half not there, where, if you have a significant other or you have a child, you know that feeling of being there but not really being there? It's like, hello, where are you? You're not quite there. And if you're entrepreneurs, your mind is working all the time. But you're not doing yourself justice by allowing your mind to work that continuously. So what's necessary, the reason the rituals are so important, is we need intentionality here. Otherwise, we default into the behaviors that draw us, the reactive behaviors that draw us, whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally.